So we should probably get things kicked off. As usual, love to start with you, Kelly.
Sure, thanks. Let me post a link here in the chat. This is to the document that I'll be speaking to, and let me share my screen. All right, here we go. Community update number 55. First, I want to start off by welcoming Chris Biscolo. He is joining the team as a product owner, and I would like to just give him a minute or so to introduce himself and what he's looking forward to on this project.
Hello, everyone. Actually, thanks for the intro. I didn't know I was going to have a minute to talk to everyone, so I don't have anything prepared. As you all, most of you know me, I think, that have been a part of this community. We're and are building a Life ID, which is an identity solution on top of RChain, and so have been heavily involved with building on RChain already. So been out of it for the last 2 months, at least in the weeds as I was prior to that. So I have a little catching up to do, but I'm really excited to do that.
Excellent. Thank you. Sorry to put you on the spot, but I'm
No
so
problem.
excited, and the team is very excited. We're just really looking forward to working with Chris and looking forward to the expertise and especially his history with the project and helping us move forward to a Mercury. So very quickly, we are in the tail end of a 2-week sprint that's going to end on the 21st. And we plan to release our Node 8.3 as soon as that sprint is over. So early the week of January 21st will be the next release of our node. The team is excited to take advantage of some of Greg's time. He has the opportunity to meet in Poland next week. So most of the team will be there and for what we're calling an extreme coding session, where the priorities are implementation of cost accounting and wallets. We're not promising that they'll be done, but those are the priority and the focal points of making sure that we have take advantage of that quality time that they can work together, and most of our team doesn't sleep, so we get a lot of time from them on that. So very excited. Mercury requirements and acceptance criteria, really nothing to give an update on other than here's where you can find that information. It absolutely is our focal point. You'll notice if you take a look at it that there's still some open issues in terms of can we describe a feature in terms of a test that can demonstrate its completeness. This is the key priority, is making sure that we understand all of those feature requirements in terms of tests that can demonstrate completeness. Where there is complete understanding, we are in the process of building out those tests. The SRE team is helping with this, as well as some of our Bounty developers. We are continuing work with Whiteblock. They just gave us an update that they were unblocked related to the exposure of metrics via Grafana. So we'll take a look at that. They've submitted a PR today to help automate those tests and to get the platform up and running for us. So we'll take a peek at that either later today or start of day tomorrow. Testnet status, we still do not have a public testnet. There are known issues blocking it. There's a link on that document that will tell you where to look to see the status on those. And just, as always, that's really our #1 priority, as for most of the team right now, focusing on stability, although next week that priority will shift a bit as we work towards thinking about some of the features to take advantage of the time that they have together. Related to the work on the platform, we are almost done with the effort to make changes to the code base to use F consistently. This has been work that's been in progress for the past couple weeks, and I'm looking forward to it being complete so we can free up some resources for other things, and also to take advantage of the improvements that it gives us, where we have some security improvements with that, as well as performance improvements. There is work in progress to update and bring over the performance test harness into #1, the co-op's Google Cloud instance, and then to develop a contract that we will use to measure performance, where on the RChain platform, when we're talking about performance, we're talking about the number of COM events per second. We'll use that contract to understand where the baseline is, where we are today, and then have a plan to assure that every commit made to the code base going forward will be tested and looking for regression. We certainly don't want to regress performance as we move forward with development. We have updated the user guide for running Node. If you are interested in understanding how many peers you have and you're connected to as a node operator, that has changed with the implementation of the new metrics API. So Sebastian has updated instructions for us there. We are still doing work related to supporting Node receiving blocks of all sizes, and to make sure that Node doesn't crash when faced with a block that is too large. So this week, Pavel has implemented a way to stop streaming blobs if they don't fit. And it's kind of like a circuit breaker mechanism where, it's getting information, it realizes, oh, no, this is too much, and it will then stop, similar to how a circuit breaker works. So he's implemented the framework for how we can do that. The next step is really to define, well, what is a reason for that circuit breaker to break, and that's the work. That's the next work. It probably won't be addressed next week, but probably the week following. And then Sebastian has started work on the new configuration file format. We're moving to the HOCON format, and very much thank you, members of the community, for your feedback on that. We had we had asked for your feedback several weeks ago in Discord, and really grateful for the resounding thumbs up. So we're going to take on that work. In Casper this week, we replaced the Turin Oracle with a Clique Safety Oracle. This should help us with some debugging issues, and that went into the code base yesterday, so we look forward to playing with that during the community test next Tuesday. The team will be doing some experiments with that tomorrow as part of their internal dev team testing. We are investigating a sneaky little bug related to an assertion error and the safety oracle. We saw it last week and found an issue that we thought was creating it, and Dom helped put a fix in. Dom and Kent worked together to get a fix in, and that did resolve that particular issue. But then it appeared again this week, again during community testing. And so investigation is underway to understand if this is just a little blip and a small error that can be fixed again, or if it's really pointing to something more serious. As we're doing that, simultaneously, work is underway to expand the test coverage for bonding. This is where this assertion error, where we're seeing this assertion error and the issue with the safety oracle is at the time of bonding. So making sure that we have much more meaty tests. So we have a test for bonding, and it's kind of fairly simple, but we recognize in community testing that bonding is not always so simple, and there's some messy scenarios that we still have to be able to successfully come to the other side of and have people successfully bond. So once again, a real shout out to our community testers. Nutzipper and Paula this week really helped us better understand this, and I really appreciate your help in that space. It's saving us a lot of time in the dev team, and it's just an important part of the work of delivering a platform developed by the RChain community. So thanks again for your help there. The SRE team continues to develop tests related to the Mercury features, as I mentioned earlier. Tomasz is addressing a bug we found in RDoctor, which is our log aggregator that we use during community tests and in other instances where we are creating a network. And finally, work started implementing a monitoring system to really take take better care of co-op supported nodes, largely bootstraps. So we want to just make sure that we don't miss any time when bootstrap is down, or can respond quickly when bootstrap is down. So with that, I'm happy to turn it over to any questions you might have.
Well, it's not a question, Kelly, but just a comment with respect to the safety oracle. So it is my understanding, and again, I could be incorrect on this, but it's my understanding that Vlad and Nate have a proof sketch on the correctness of the safety oracle specification for the Clique oracle.
Okay.
So it's not just that it's it gives us a more debugging insight, but that at least the spec, if not the implementation, has good shape. we can prove it correct, and that's an important shift in the direction that we're trying to go.
Okay, and I assume Kent knows that as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's was in large measure his motivation.
Ah, okay, I missed that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions from folks?
Yeah. Hey, Kelly, it's Ed.
Ed.
So some questions about testnet. I've read through the link of the blocking testnet issues, and they look very precise, but it's challenging for me to get sort of a higher level summary of how close testnet is and some of the thorny issues that have been slowing it down to become a public and robust testnet. So could you kind of describe at a higher level either some of the metrics around testnets to date, like how many blocks have been processed at the maximum number of blocks processed on any testnet, or the number of participants or nodes in a testnet, and then any color commentary on sort of the challenges, the current challenges with testnet becoming.
Sure. Yeah, that
Thank
makes
you.
sense.
I know that's a lot.
No, it's fine, and it totally makes sense. So in terms of at a high level of what we talk about when we're looking for ready to launch a testnet, we're looking for the ability for a testnet to launch and stay up. So uptime is a real issue. Obviously, block propagation is another one. So being able to have a scenario where we do not run into out-of-memory errors, for example, or we don't run into issues where where nodes are failing for reasons that would be a detriment to the uptime of a testnet. We're also very interested, especially as we look at launching a public testnet, it's going to be critical that we be able to bond new validators. So I would say that those are the top three. Again, that's uptime, block propagation, and the ability to bond validators and have them join to participate in the validation process on a testnet. Now, to your question of size, we have we have a Tuesday group that works, and usually we have about 10 to 12 participants bringing up nodes and doing things, although those are pretty small little test nets in terms of participants and also in terms of blocks. Yeah. We do also have an internal test net. It's our Rundeck test net. We have seen it get up to, I think I saw it get up to 700 blocks before some nodes pooped out, but that was several weeks ago. When we had some other things running. Right now, largely we're looking at when we're running that testnet and we're refreshing that testnet. Right now, we're largely looking at validation and the ability to validate and finalize blocks, as well as the ability to add new validators to an existing network. But again, that's very small. That's a testnet that involves a bootstrap and typically 5 validators with maybe another validator joining manually to recreate kind of an in the wild scenario. But what we are very excited about as Whiteblock has prepared their test environment is now we have the opportunity for thousands of nodes, or we have the opportunity to really control and, let's say, bring up however many validators we'd like to, and to run it in an environment where we can really let it go and see how many blocks we can get. We can look at more closely at uptime, and we have a monitoring system built into that infrastructure to really help us understand taking testnet into the real world and taking it bigger. So let me pause there. Does that make sense? Does that address your question?
Yeah, I appreciate the detailed answer, and certainly the focus of the dev team and the help of the testers on Tuesday mornings and so forth. In terms of like when it's the internal testnet is peaking out at 700 or 800 blocks, I think you said. What's the primary issue that's facing? Is it memory or something else?
It's typically an out of memory error, and we've taken the last time I saw that, so we've made some recent changes, and I don't know that we've fully run testnet for long enough to do that, and I need to make a note to do that, because what we've done is we have we put a change in maybe last week about removing headers when a block is finalized, to try and reduce things that node has to hold on to. Yeah. So they've made some improvements there, and it'll be interesting to see the impact that that's had.
And do you have an estimate when a public testnet might be available?
I would say a very I mentioned this the other day to both Greg and Chris. I think there is It's not unrealistic, and it's aggressive to say that we could potentially be ready in about 4 weeks, looking at what's on the table that we know that's on the table today. So
Okay.
that's assuming that we don't add any new bugs, and we do have we do have a bit of a track record of solve one, find two. But I would say, you know, a very aggressive and not totally unrealistic timeline is 1 month.
Okay. Thanks so much, Kelly.
My pleasure.
Hey, thanks for the great answer and great question. Also in regards to testnet and more generally community engagement with developers, is there any value in getting more people involved in the Tuesday testnet sessions or the no testing sessions?
Yeah, you know, I think it's a good opportunity. If you're interested in being a validator, or you're interested in being a DApp developer, and or if you're just at all interested and curious in running a node and understanding how the platform works, the more the merrier. It really is. It is a great opportunity to learn from one another, and it's a great opportunity to get, you know, just to play around with the software and see how it works. We are welcome to all comers. If you're very green and you have never run a node, please come. We're happy to help you get started. That being said, it is, you know, it does happen at a finite time. I know it doesn't work for everyone worldwide. It doesn't make sense for us to do more of those types of sessions at this point. We're getting a lot of value from the one we're doing now, and I don't have enough resources to do multiple ones of those a week. But everyone is welcome, and we're very happy to accommodate people at all skill levels.
I also want to point out, Jonathan, to your point, and in keeping with our decentralized approach, the value of one of the values of the white block effort is that now it's literally a matter of minutes to launch a test net of whatever size you want to do, right? So we don't have to centralize through Kelly, right, or the testing group. So if people want to help, they can be launching in minutes a test net on their resources and uncovering issues. And then we have, you know, an open JIRA for the community to be able to submit tickets, and then we can go through those and cull them and find ones that are not duplicates. So it's like at this point, anyone in the community who wants to kind of get a group together to start testing the software, you know, it's ready. You know, people can just go do that, and they can launch a test net and get going. So, for example, if the Asian communities would like to do this, they can, you know, they can sort of listen in on the Node Testing Tuesdays and take away what they need to know in order to do it on their side. I have to say, we've got Kevin Goldstein, a board member, standing by to talk a little bit about his experience. So if I might just put a pause on this conversation, toss the mic to Kevin Goldstein, and then we can return to these conversations because I think they're really important. But I just want to give Kevin Goldstein the floor because he's sort of got a time window. Kevin, are you ready?
Greg, can you hear me?
I can, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks. No, thanks for the invitation, and happy to join the call, and greetings to everyone. I was asked by Greg to simply give a couple comments about something I did this past week. And it was actually Ian Bloom who had reached out to me a couple weeks back and saying we had an opportunity for the co-op to be represented on a panel at the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association. That's a mouthful, but the Electric Cooperative Association CEO gathering this past week down in Florida. And so I was happy to represent the co-op and go down and participate in a panel. And what this was all about is the panel was, where's the value relative to leveraging blockchain in the energy industry, if you will, and particularly, obviously, electric power is what the co-ops deliver. And as I learned, more than 10% of the U.S. receives their electricity via co-op. So as the only co-op in our ecosystem, it was great to serve on the panel, and it was great to share, you know, insights from what RChain is doing relative to potentially their ecosystem, as well as those who don't know me, I work across the ecosystem, and I'm currently in Miami attending some events, including, of all things, the North American Bitcoin Conference the next couple of days after I fulfill my responsibilities today. So it was an opportunity to carry the flag of RChain into this ecosystem. There's an opportunity to share knowledge, information, build relationships. And I think two key relationships which we established was with the two senior folks from the National Association. They're based in Arlington, Virginia, who work with the 900 cooperatives in their association across the country, as well as, and what they specifically do is try to introduce new technologies that their associations, and it comes from the CEOs down, can leverage. So this was the first blockchain panel that they had, and they tend to introduce new technologies, new ideas at the CEO gatherings before they then introduce them at their broader meetings that go on during the balance of the year. So I think we were very successful in establishing who RChain was, sharing some knowledge and information, helping the association with their effort, and obviously the hope is that as they move forward, they would look to RChain. And so I'm happy to report that I got an email earlier today, which I was able to share with Ian, so he can confirm that we planted some seeds, and the email said that they were interested in exploring a pilot, and they would like to talk to RChain. So I think this is an example of, hey, we want to probe into the different industries and find out how we can collaborate, how we can partner, and how we can leverage the platform that you all are so aptly developing for real world use. And so this is energy, and there's opportunities there. And obviously the email I got today in response to a follow-up note I had sent to the senior folks that I had met, thanking them, sharing an article I'd seen relative to them, they write back and say, hey, I hadn't even had a chance to follow up with them about specifically bringing up the idea of a pilot, but it was alluded to, and they've come back to me. So it was, I think, time well spent. Happy to do it. And I'll stop there if there are any questions, or Greg, you want to ask me anything, or Ian, who certainly was instrumental in my going down to join this.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Kevin, for your report. And I really appreciate your engagement, your level of engagement, and kind of paving the way here. And I absolutely agree with you that, first steps is getting the relationships in place. Just to add a little color to this, on the one hand, I've spoken in the last several weeks about how in 2018, we want to focus on cultivating enterprise pilot projects. And this is one of, and transactive energy is exactly one of the directions we want to pursue aggressively. And the other side of this that I think is really important for people to understand is that Consensus, Joe Lubin's organization, has pursued a transactive energy both in the New York State region as well as in Germany. And then Cell Labs did a developing country pilot project in transactive energy. And if I understand the summary of their experience, that the key challenge was not technological but regulatory. That the real issue here is that we have a regulatory challenge to get around, because there are a lot of stakeholders, and we have public safety to consider, but with the co-ops, the electrical co-ops, they're more in charge of their destiny, so to speak. So they're in charge of their own regulation, which means that engaging with them, and because of our own status as a co-op, we're sort of more welcomed into the fold. Was that your impression, Kevin? Was that being a co-op made them sort of a little bit more sympathetic to us?
Yeah, I think Greg's spot on. I think being a co-op, obviously there's an affiliation in that sense. And quite frankly, I joked before I went down with my moderator from the association, and I joked when I was down there that, you know, my talking about this new evolving technology and what the potential use could be, and being someone like myself of my vintage, shall we say, with some gray hair, you know, it helps, because these are the CEOs who, for the most part, don't fully understand what this technology is, and trying to let them understand conceptually the potential value. And coming from someone, let's just say, who's a little older, who's closer to their age, doesn't hurt either. But there's an education process. There's a relationship building process. This is what goes on when you build businesses or, you know, bring efforts to fruition. And so it's a staged process, but I think it's an example in the energy field where, as they come up to speed, the association are the key players. And that's why it was important to me to build a relationship with the two senior people, but they're the gatekeepers. And they're the ones who are working with the 900 co-ops. They're the ones who are, you know, engaged with the 400 CEOs that showed up, as well as all the industry people. I met people from the state of Utah, the state of Colorado, from the state level. So I think there's a general awareness that the technology can enable a better experience. But obviously, in every industry we look at here, we're going to have to educate, get comfortable, and any affiliation, whether it's coming from someone who's looks similar, age similar, you know, similar and naive like me maybe, but the reality is people buy and are comfortable with people they can relate to. And so I think that being the only co-op in the ecosystem, representing a co-op certainly was helpful, and certainly was something that I talked about from the panel and was asked to speak about it.
Awesome. That's good news. So the hope is that this might give us an advantage when approaching the transactive energy market, right? So, and just you know, in case I'm using a buzzword here. So when we say transactive energy, we're really talking about, you know, sort of a more decentralized approach, right? So you can imagine households that are much more sophisticated in their ability to gather solar energy or wind energy, and then they want to share it with other households. And it's a very natural fit to wed a cryptocurrency or a blockchain solution to that setting. And you know, it's, you know, one of the even in 2015 in Sydney, Australia, at the Koala conference, one of the winners of the hackathon was a transactive energy proposal. So this has been something that's been in the makings for quite some time. But again, the stumbling block has largely been regulatory rather than technological. Which is not to say there aren't technological problems, but it's mostly regulatory. So this feels like a really good big sort of entry point via the co-ops and our relationships as cooperatives into that sector. Thanks so much, Kevin.
Right.
I know you have another.
Yeah, and I'll
conference.
jump back in. I appreciate that, and I'll jump back in and say, you know, I agree with what you said, and I think with Ian's help, certainly we have now the relationship to the key influencers at the National Association. So obviously we'll be following up, and we'll see how soon we can potentially launch a pilot, or how do we engage to get to that point. But you know, I think we had some success here, and we'll try to build on it. And with Ian's help, I'll certainly be working with these folks. So thank you very much for the invitation. And I'll wish you all a good rest of your meeting. And I apologize for having to jump back out, but thanks for the time.
Yeah, hey Kevin.
So much, Kevin.
Hey Kevin, one sec. Yeah, this is Ned. How are you? So yeah, let me know how I can engage with you, and I'll talk with Ian in doing a pilot project for them. You know.
Yeah, we'll go through.
No, for sure. Yeah, if you can connect with Ian, and then we'll coordinate. But again, hopefully we'll get a bunch of these pilots going on as we move through the year in different industries. Because fundamentally, it's about what is this great technology that you all are developing and building, what is it going to enable? And part of the role I've played in my business's career is try to identify and understand how to solve problems, how to create better experiences. And when you think about the CEOs of a cooperative, they exist like we do to serve our members, to help everybody. So if there's some way that we can help them understand and then validate the value of this, to give them the opportunity to give a better experience, deliver something better, that's why they exist as the heads of their co-op. So, I think it's an example of hopefully one of many, but it's a really encouraging one based on what I just experienced, and even the email today about, hey, it's their idea. We want to launch into a pilot. So thanks for the support. We'll be following up, and obviously the more of us that can get involved in these types of efforts, the better.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Ciao. All right. So wanted to continue the conversation along the lines of the technical discussion, because I think it was really, really important. Just we needed to get that in there. So we're sort of interleaving like rolling threads here. Serving a little bit of one thread and then another. So Ed, with respect to your comments about testnet, I totally appreciate the desire for a stable public testnet, and we're obviously, our obligation is on the software quality side. But there's another piece to this, of course, which is that how many of the validators need to be under the cooperative's control. So I think for some period of time, so in other words, it's not just about the software quality, right? So getting the stable testnet up ultimately is also going to be about engagement from third parties that are not just the cooperative. So our focus is on the software quality, and anyone who wants to help us accelerate the software quality piece, that's one of the main motivations for getting the white block thing going, is so that nobody should feel blocked because the co-op doesn't have public servers that people can pound on, right? So people can download the software, fire up a testnet, and be pounding on it. Okay, so any other questions about the technical updates before we move on?
Not a question on technical updates, but there are developers who would like to, that are not officially part of the program, part of RChain dev team, that would like to participate. And I heard Kelly mention that there is still a developer bounty program. Is that something that should be propagated, Kelly? And if so, where do I point people to?
Yes, we still do have budget for bounty work as it relates to the delivery of Mercury. So no special projects, no pet projects.
Right.
But let me, I'll grab a link for you, Jonathan, and put it in the window. But it surfaces issues that we know that are up for bounty. That being said, if you are a developer and you're interested and you see a need that, and you search through Jira and you don't find a ticket, you're welcome to put up a ticket. And if it relates to Mercury and it's work that you want to do, we're happy to get your support on that.
Great, I'll share that to Asia.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, great. So then just to recap one thing that Kelly said. So on Saturday, with luck, I'm stepping on a plane to head out to Singapore to participate in the Binance Block Week conference. There we'll be discussing with various folks the steps for being able to list Rev on exchanges. That's sort of the primary thing, is beginning to cultivate those relationships in a face-to-face manner so that we can have Rev available on major exchanges. Rock, so that people are clear. There is no contemplation whatsoever of having rocks on any major third-party exchanges. And then on the flight back, I'll return kind of the other way around the globe and stop off at Warsaw. We'll have a lot of the dev team there. So Kayvon is planning on going, Kent is planning on going, as well as the folks who are already in the Poland, the greater Warsaw area. And as Kelly said, just so people are aware, our focus is to try to, get as much done as we possibly can on the wallet requirements and implementation, as well as the cost accounting requirements and implementation. Both of those are in, a sort of an intermediate state now, and we want to push those a bit forward. If anyone has any questions about that or the focus there, please don't hesitate to jump onto Discord and give us your thoughts or questions about that. So then I also want to say that if folks want to know more about the progress with respect to various partnerships in the audio space, we're going to refer folks to Fabian to field any of those questions. But I can say that we are making considerable headway, and we're very excited about how things are shaping up. I can't say much more than that, as you know, because these are ongoing negotiations. But that's I continue to remain, or actually my confidence in those deals, those negotiations is growing considerably. Now let's see. We had a few other points that we wanted to speak to. Derek, do you remember what some of the other points were?
Yeah, Greg, just for reference, it's in the staff channel on Discord.
Awesome, good. But Derek, do you want to speak to what's been going on with marketing?
Sure. Hold on one second.
Oh, can we get a drum and bass if you're going to do the whole?
I'm at Fabian's and we're listening through his speakers, so
okay.
But I'll just talk through mine. We had Augmate on the podcast this week. I would highly recommend it. It was a short one because Dana only had a few minutes to talk, but what they're trying to do with augmented reality on blockchain specifically, things like virtual reality and augmented reality, things like sexual harassment trainings on VR. One of the most interesting applications I've ever heard is creating a social coordination tool for travelers going to Mecca, because there's always problems with pilgrims. There's many coordination problems. So they're actually working on that as a long-term strategy. Really fascinating. So one of the best podcast conversations I've had with anyone. I've talked to Greg Heiss, who I think is on the call now, but we'll be putting him out either later this week or early next week, talking about reflective ventures. And some people have had questions in Discord about portfolio companies and stuff. So we'll be releasing that very soon. And the other one is Translo, that will be talking with Calmeron later this week. So a lot of good movement in the portfolio companies. I would also recommend everyone check out Proof, because their sort of beta or alpha launch is going on, and they're checking out news stories on a daily basis. So I'm really impressed with what I'm seeing happening over there.
Thanks, Derek. Greg, are you still there?
Maybe we can move on to.
Who goes next?
Hang on, sorry.
Okay.
No, I just for some reason I was muted. I thought I wasn't muted, but no, I was just saying I was thanking Derek. I really appreciate that. And I was just commenting that we had also contemplated a brain candy podcast. I've recently been speaking with some developers and mathematicians and realized that there's a whole bunch of things about the row calculus and Rowlang that people don't know in terms of its range of applications.
I'll just jump in and say we were talking about that yesterday. I think it's a great idea. One thing, my specialty in media is not in the developer side, so I think that having more of that engagement for developers is great. Kayvon just submitted a piece for me on the RSong architecture for the blog that we're working on right now, which is very cool. And if anyone in the community has interest in submitting more technical or developmental pieces, it's definitely a whole, because my application side of things, but I can use more input on the developer side. And I think a Brain Candy podcast, or a couple of them, is going to serve that side of the community very well.
Awesome. Yeah, very good. Very good. Okay, let's see. So we've done the dev update. We've done the update.
Greg,
yeah.
Greg, can you address? I'm sorry. I don't want to poke too much at Ethereum, but they're having a security vulnerability again that was announced yesterday. The DAO reentry bug is making its appearance again. I would like you to maybe just briefly speak to that security vulnerability. Maybe not today, but at some point, because like that's a major selling point of RChain is simple things like that should not be attack vectors on our network.
Yeah, I mean, we don't get that particular attack vector via the Rolang execution mechanism. It's a different execution mechanism. I can go through the details of that in another venue, but effectively, it's like the difference. But that's sort of that's less of like the spirit of the bugs like this that I really want to point out, and I don't think people quite have internalized this yet, is that the biggest security exposure is not going to be core protocol exposure. So in this case, just because of the architecture, it's more on the core protocol side. But the reality is that the vast majority of the exposure is in user-defined contracts. That's going to be a real problem when you start to have user-defined contracts running in excess of 10,000 transactions per second, right? So that's something that people really, really need to think about, right? The saving grace for Ethereum on the first time the DAO bug showed up was because they were running at about 15 transactions per second. If they had been running, let's say, at Visa level speed, somewhere in the neighborhood of 40,000 transactions per second, what would have happened to the Ethereum network? People really need to internalize what that means. And I think that it's really important for people to then ask themselves, so what's a practical solution, right? Because obviously code auditing by these kinds of security auditing firms missed the issue in the DAO contracts. And it was only post-mortem analysis that uncovered the problems that were later reported in the media. And so there has to be a different approach if we're going to have these networks handle mission critical kinds of applications, right? And by mission critical, I mean, extremely large sums of money, like in the billions, and involving life and limb. So for those kinds of mission critical applications, for the platform to support those kinds of mission critical applications, where the security measures have to be effectively automated, and they have to fit in with the natural development methodology for people who are writing smart contracts. So that's why the RChain architecture is the way it is. Most people who are writing code that is going to be mission critical, I'm not talking about weekend hobbyists or people who are standing up a website for a friend. I'm talking about teams that stand up, commercial sites that, are utilized in mission critical systems. So for people who are familiar with that, that kind of development experience, they are familiar with having a compiler type check their code, right? That's a part of their normal development methodology. And it turns out that the type system that we're developing for Rolang has superior capability when it comes to checking for these kinds of issues, like the one that reared its head with the DAO bug, but also a much wider range of security capabilities. And the way that's done is by writing down in a higher level fashion what the expected properties of the code is, and then checking that the code that is written actually preserves the properties that were intended. And that's exactly the way someone writing in Scala or Haskell or OCaml or F# develops today. Even in Java or C#, that's the way they develop today, right? So they write down for each chunk, sort of compilation unit, a type which expresses certain properties that the implementation has to preserve, and then the compiler checks that the code actually preserves those characteristics, and that's just a part of everyday methodology. And it's important to understand that fitting into the everyday methodology is mission critical to delivery of these kinds of security features. One of the things that's really hard for developers and other people is context switching. So if you look at just by comparison, so Yoichi worked extensively with the Ethereum Foundation to prove some properties about earlier versions of Casper that Vitalik was building, and his proofs were really about toy versions of the system that are completely unrelated to the actual running code, and so that's not going to work when we're talking about, again, the deployment of mission critical systems. The properties that you need to establish need to be properties of the actual running code and not some mirrored or mimicked copy of the code. So the long and the short of it is, without these kinds of security measures, greater transaction speeds mean that the network is riskier than they would be otherwise. So the saving grace of Bitcoin and Ethereum today is that they run very slowly. When they start moving into these faster speeds, they will be all the smart contracting platforms will be many times riskier, because most of the exposure is in user developed contracts, and you need to make sure that whatever your security mechanisms you put in place to secure the user defined contracts, that they fit with the development methodology of the folks that are developing those contracts, or they won't be used. And then whatever applications are using those contracts will be at significant risk. It's been shown again and again and again, and the DAO is only one example of thousands of documented examples that human audits of code really don't amount to very much when we're talking about this kind of security.
Now, for the security, we will have that with Venus and Saturn, right?
Saturn is way out there. So just so people are aware, the implementation of the behavioral types is targeted for Venus. but I want to say that if people want to play with an implementation of the kinds of things that that we're talking about, I would strongly urge them to take a look at the spatial logic model checker. And then if they want to look at an implementation of those ideas for Rolang, there's a little repo that I have which provides a model checker for the behavioral types for an earlier version of Rolang that's already there today, so people can play around with those today. So, and the point of that, Jim, is to say that it's not like we don't know how to do this. We haven't ever rendered this in code before, but it is. But to do it well is going to require some considerable engagement and involvement from folks who understand the state of the art. But with that, I understand that you have a little demo that you wanted to provide.
Sure. Well, you announced last week that we would have a demo of Dan's voting this week, and I know
Kayvon was able to actually give a successful version of the demo at the end of last week. But you said you had it integrated with Discord. Is that correct?
Yes, and this is version 0 of macro Rolang.
Sweet.
Where we can, define a name to be some value. And I invited people to make lockers, and this is Dan's locker contract. Valentine this morning typed in eval, which will evaluate Rolang or macro Rolang. And we put in make my locker, and there's debugging in here, sorry. But it defined a macro locker Valentine and a macro nonce Valentine 1 and inbox Valentine so we can send them stuff. And I typed in the macro allowed to vote Valentine in the flavors ballot. It increased my nonce, and it sent the right to vote to Valentine. And this was modeled after, he modeled his contracts after an Ethereum anonymous voting contract. I asked him to vote. He did eval vote, flavors, vanilla. He did that here. And it found the proposal and voted on it and gave, and then I typed in the macro voter results for the flavors ballot. And it increased my knots. It showed the tally for strawberry was 1, vanilla was 2. The winner was vanilla. I did a new ballot colors, set red, green, blue, and we can see that it did that. I've invited more people to type $make my locker in the collab. Where's my new ballot? I don't see my new ballot. Oh, here.
Yeah, there it is.
Here I echoed the, okay, this is eval executes the Rolang, echo will show it.
Mhm.
But this is an example of new ballot, set, calling it colors is the ballot name, and the choices are set red, green, blue, and then the echo shows here the Rolang that it executes, where it looks up the locker, looks up my locker, it looks up the ballot contract. Okay, there's a macro dollar ballot, which gives us this, which fills in this address here. Then I send to the ballot contract, red, green, blue, and then I look at my locker. I get my locker back and I update my locker and I put in there the ballot colors, and I have a chair capability and a get results capability.
This is very nice, Jim. Thank you very much. I think one of the things that this is demonstrating is that we can integrate Rolang-based voting capabilities directly into our communication mechanism, which is Discord. So I think that's a very nice demonstration of that, and I think makes it clear that we're on track to be able to have a platform-based mechanism whereby the membership, the cooperative membership, can express their will and sentiment.
Yeah, and this is a good place to demo contracts before you have the graphical interface done.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's exactly right. It's really nice, and I think it really makes a key point in terms of, like, you know, in order for the cooperative to function, we really need these on-chain tools, right? We need these on-chain tools for people to be able to express their will and their sentiment. And what you're showing here is that we can integrate that directly with our existing communication channels. And we can make this work in a relatively short order with relatively small resources on this. So if we turn our attention full to this, I think we can easily make something that's usable by the average co-op member and not just the geeks.
We can certainly, you know, demonstrate a lot, you know. But we do need more people involved to get the security aspects. That we're using toy private and public keys now that we make from Discord. So we want to integrate RChain and et cetera, et cetera.
Awesome. No, this is really great. This is a nice follow-up to what we did last week. So I know we're a little bit over, but I think Jonathan wanted to give us some updates. So Jonathan?
Yes, hi. So per comments I made in the most recent debrief, the goal of RChain Asia this month is to start tying up and formalizing a bunch of the relationships and partnerships that have been primarily verbal. To that end, I'm starting to get LOIs and MOUs signed. The one that I'm most excited about is that we now have a go-ahead that I want to formalize with a university in Korea, with whom we're going to be submitting a grant proposal to the Korean government for $2 million to create a blockchain R&D facility that will be focused on many of the issues of specific interest to RChain. So the vice president of the university is our sponsor. He himself is an electrical engineer with a PhD from Case Western in FPGAs, field programmable gate arrays. And we are, Joshi and Isaac, HJ in Korea, and I will be co-writing this proposal with the computer science, math, and administrative departments at the university. So that proposal will be, yeah, so that's in progress. So I'm very excited about that. And in the education front, we now have a relationship with one of the premier technical training facilities in Singapore, and Peter Finn is leading the charge on setting us up for week-long training sessions in Singapore. And then finally, Greg, of course, is going to Singapore to Binance, but in parallel and separately, we're giving an RChain presentation at Huabi headquarters on the 23rd. And let's see, do I have the link here handy? Let me check. I'll just pop it in the window. Okay, and also I've been asked to be involved in a Longhash Hatch program. Longhash is the premier blockchain incubator in Singapore, and I'll be giving a presentation in a series that's also being, where also EOS, NEO, Zilliqa, and Stellar are presenting. So that's happening on January 29th. So brief update, there's a lot more going on than that. I encourage everybody to join the weekly RChain Asia debriefs, which is at Thursday, 9 p.m. Pacific time.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Jonathan, since I have kind of two implementations of mobile process calculi to FPGA under my belt.
Yes, of course.
Would love to engage with your group on that proposal.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so let's set up some time to have that discussion. Good. All right. With that, I think we're well over the hour. Unless there are any other questions or comments, let's call it there. Oh,
well, there were some topics in the staff meeting list that haven't been touched yet. So
you're right. And Kenny, I didn't ask for the report card. You should have, shouted out.
Also, if Reflective wants to speak, you can give him the space to do so.
Yeah. But Kenny, over to you.
Yep. Thank you very much, everyone. Report card, just put in the link to the blog there, and just going to quickly go over it. So let's share my screen. Share that. Okay, so real quick today, not a ton of updates, so let's go pretty quickly. We currently have, so the participation in governance, this will be IOB4, will be addressed next week by the governance committee. So that's getting a little ahead, but the governance committee's final charter was approved by the board on the 10th, I think. This will be the last meeting that the board came together on. And so those members will be getting together, plus anyone that would like to join. It'll likely be on Thursday of next week, but do go ahead and check the governance channel on Discord for further updates on that meeting. The monetary policy, we don't have any updates from Jason at this time, but I'm sure we'll be getting back into that work fairly soon here. In the RChain improvement process, still no updates on that, but the draft charter is still available for people to check out. Like I said, the governance committee was formalized, and so that their work will begin in earnest next week. We don't have the unofficial minutes out for the 10th yet, but we'll get those out fairly soon. But a couple highlights that the other minutes were approved formally, as well as the governance committee, and like I said, that charter. But the biggest update for today was that initial work from the Audit and Finance Committee has begun. So Mark Pui was also nominated to take over the Audit and Finance Committee for at the last meeting. And so I just pasted in here some of his quick work on getting that committee started. So these are basic questions about how the co-op runs its finances, documents, procedures, bank accounts, accounting, systems, all this kind of stuff. So this is just a little window into what that committee will be doing with its time as it goes about selecting an organization to actually perform the audit, which has not been defined yet. And then a quick update on the compilations, which are going to be due by the end of the week, essentially. But on the 20th is what the resolution says. So we had a bunch of back and forth with Hunt Jackson this week about open questions about these a bunch of different transactions that on the books for the co-op. So that the last communication we had from Hunt Jackson was yesterday. We provided back all the answers to their questions, and I haven't seen anything today. They do absolutely realize where our deadline is, and they haven't indicated that they think that they will miss that. But Friday's coming up pretty soon here, so still on track as far as I know. But yeah, it is going to be tight. So that is what I have for update, and yeah, thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, I really think we are way over. So I would like to, I mean, if Reflective wants to give a update, that's cool. Yeah, please go ahead. But I do think we should release people because we're 10 minutes over the hour here. Okay. Going once. Going twice. All right. Looking forward to seeing everyone next week. And I guess I'll be seeing them from Poland.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Ciao.
All right. Have a great week.
Bye.
Ciao.